Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Bryan Hadzik with NCSI. I'm going to be walking you through some of the solutions that Avanti has in their unified endpoint management and security pillars. And you can kind of see here on this slide, it talks about them over the left-hand side. Avanti does a lot of other things, and like John said, try and attend some of those webinars or look at our YouTube page for other recordings for things like service management or asset management or identity management. But today we're going to tackle the unified endpoint management and security management. These are really important to us. They're incredibly critical to, like John was saying, the top 5 of the security controls from the Center for Internet Security. Number 1 and number 2 are understanding what assets you have, understanding what software you have. So, sometimes this gets overlooked as either boring or not as exciting as some of the things that we do in technology, but, incredibly fundamental to what we do. As part of the bigger picture, as you start to look at Avanti solutions, we also have some great packages that start to bundle some of these things together. Our Unified IT ELA actually unlocks everything. So everything that we're kind of doing in this these webinar series and everything that we talked about today can be unlocked with a single license with the Avanti Unified IT ELA, or you can even do what's called a pick two, where you grab a couple of the different columns and implement solutions from 2 of the different columns. Today we're really focusing on the unified endpoint management, and we break that down into several aspects. And we're going to talk about endpoint management, mostly focusing on your laptops, your desktops, keeping them patched, keeping an inventory of them, pushing out software to them, imaging, things like that. Mobile device management, our phones, our iPads, our Android devices, these are still something we have to take care of and keep an inventory of and stay on top of. So we're going to talk about that mobile device management. We have Environment Manager. Environment Manager is a great way to understand the personalization of our users. Users are delicate when they don't have their icon in just the right spot, or they don't have a favorite. They're going to call complaining about it. So let's make it so that the end user experience is seamless, whether they're logging in via VDI or a new machine, or moving from Windows 7 to Windows 10 or Windows 10 to Windows 10. So let's keep that end user experience good. Application control gives us the ability to manage the applications on the machine. We'll talk about how, by default, I think that Windows is broken, allowing any application in the world, be it malicious or benign or authorized or unauthorized, to execute on a machine, how we can control that. And then file director is being able to understand what the files a user is actually consuming and give them access to it either remotely or on a new machine, and try to solve some of those problems of users saving things to the desktop or saving things where they're not supposed to. And lastly, we're going to talk about the Avanti Cloud. This is a new offering in the Avanti portfolio, and this tries to leverage a lot of the new IoT-style technology that's coming out there for managing corporate machines. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So first, let's jump into our Unified Endpoint Manager. What is Unified Endpoint Manager? So I'm going to jump into my server and kind of walk you through the details on that. So Unified Endpoint Management is being able to get your hands around all of your devices. And those devices could be things like workstations. You can see up in the top, I have servers, I have workstations, I have laptops, I have PCs, I have Mac, I have Linux. And being able to get, first and foremost, understanding what the devices are out there. So inventory as the core of what we do. Remember, control number 1 of the critical security controls is understanding what hardware is on the network. So being able to get a robust inventory, we install an agent on the machine, and then the agent gives us all the information that we would ever care about. Things like, the manufacturer. I can see this is a Dell. I can see it's an Inspiron 620. I can see the service tag. I can tell you more about the software. I can tell you everything that shows up under add move programs. I can tell you like nitty-gritty hardware details. How many memory slots are there, and what is in those memory slots? Are there, certain DIMM slots that are open or occupied or at capacity? Incredibly robust inventory we achieve by putting our agent on our machines. But we can actually do a couple of cool tricks, like do agentless scanning. So we have a whole section here for our agentless scanner that gives us the ability to listen in on the network and find machines that pop up. This machine right here, I didn't have an agent on. but he existed on the same network as one of my machines that did have an agent. And so it's going to come back and report in with that same inventory information. It's just as robust as the inventory that you saw on a machine that does have an agent. So being able to inventory all the machines on our network, being able to understand what machines are out there is incredibly important. Kind of the next phase to that is actually going and finding them, right? Sweeping them. I'd love to be able to say, hey, all of our machines have agents on it, and that's easy to do, but that's sometimes a difficult task. So being able to crawl the network and doing it based on IP address scans, for example. Here in our unmanaged device discovery, I can tell it to sweep the network and look at certain IP address ranges and do an IPOS fingerprint or discovering them for the domain. And I can have this regularly go and scan and look for devices out there, and then have an agent automatically installed on them, or have them picked up by the agentless scanner. So that's a great way to kind of sweep your network and find out what's out there, even if it's potentially something that's not authorized or not part of the management system. And then lastly is the ability to manage devices that kind of live in relegated to the side. So my favorite example is things like printers. Printers are something that, well, we're probably not going to install software on them, and we really don't do patch management for printers, and printers and switches and things like that fill this kind of weird void of, yes, we need to know about them and understand them. However, we don't have a lot of great management for them. So we have the ability to go through and via SNMP pull in inventory information for printers, scanners, switches, et cetera, anything that shows up on the network from an SNMP perspective. So here I have, a printer, and I can get, most of the information that you would care about as it relates to printers and toner levels and things like that. As the SNMP information is given back to us, and then we can have that part of our inventory. So having a robust inventory of all of the devices on our network is incredibly important, and this can get us a very large chunk of the way there from a from an inventory perspective. Next, the ability to report on that. If I can't actually spit out a report or tell somebody else about that, it's just not any good. Having all this information here in this console is interesting, but we need to get the information out. People are always asking us questions, things like that. So extraction is our unified dashboarding technology that gives us the ability to create very pretty looking charts and graphs. For the longest time, I was such a technical person, I said, who cares what it looks like? It doesn't matter. Well, it kind of does matter. When we start talking to executives or other people, they care about what it looks like and the colors and the font and, being able to easily digest it. So our extraction is, it looks good. It is a very simple interface. It's web-based. I can have a TV hanging in my office and have, if I drag a couple of these reports down here, I can have it kind of cycle through them on a regular basis. So making it very presentable and very easy for non-technical people to consume is, a big goal of the extraction dashboard. So a very cool way to get that information out. These are a lot of the prefabricated reports that we have, but you can always go and create your own. So you go down here to the dashboard designer and you say, you know what? I want to go report against our Endpoint Manager. Notice there's a bunch of other Avanti stuff in here. This is a unified reporting across all the Avanti platforms. So, today we're talking mostly about Endpoint Manager. So we would go and focus on, hey, let's look at the computers. And let's go and create a pie chart. And let's make a pie chart based on, I don't know, what would be interesting to us based on the, domain name. So there's a pie chart based on the domain name. And then up here, I'm going to create a bar chart based on, insert whatever value that I would care about, whether their antivirus agent is running or something like that. So this gives us the ability to create these dashboards very easily. So when someone asks for a report, I can easily spit it out. Once I save it and it's up here in my dashboard, I can even schedule it. Oh, you want this report? I'm going to turn it into a PowerPoint. PowerPoint's cool because it takes each one of those boxes and turns it into a individual PowerPoint slide and has a legend associated with it. I can schedule this to happen, on a weekly basis, and I can have it delivered to, Bob's email address. And so it automatically, lands in his inbox and he doesn't have to come and bug me for those reports that he wants. So very easy to get the information out of the system. We want to make sure that it's not buried and obscure and hidden, kind of behind the scenes. All right, so I'm going to stop for a second. We actually have a question here in the inventory section. How does it know and gather the warranty end date information? So we have information from a inventory perspective about the machine. Let's use like a Dell, for example, here. Service tag. Service tag is an incredibly unique identifier associated with the machine. So here under System, I have service tag. So what we do is we have a connector in our data analytics platform. That's just kind of a subsection of the Unified Endpoint Management that has the ability to connect to third-party organizations. In this case, it's Dell. We take that service tag, we talk to a certain API that Dell has, and we're able to pull back down that warranty information and shove that data over here. So I can see that from a warranty perspective, this particular machine had an initial warranty, and here was the start date, and here's the end date. It had an extra warranty on top of it, and it's on-site service, remote diagnostics, et cetera, et cetera. So we're able to take that information and populate it based on things like the service tag. Now, not every vendor supports that, but all the major ones generally do. But we can do cool things like that with other technologies. If you wanted to, pull out information out of Active Directory, or you have a purchasing system you want to pull in a PO number associated with, or you even just want to create custom data. You want to have a custom tag in here. Oh, we have a special asset tag, and we'll put in here and say this machine has a certain asset tag. So we can automate a lot of that ingestion of outside information, and then additionally we have the ability to do things potentially by hand if the user wants to do it that way. All right, so we have a robust inventory. Again, how do we use it? How do we go and consume this? Lots of times management's going to come in and say, hey, I need to know about X. I need to know about all of our Dell workstations or something like that. That's where queries come into play. So a query is the ability to ask the database a question without having to know SQL. I don't know SQL, so I don't want you to have to learn it either to be able to pull this information out. So what we're going to do is create a query. We're going to go down to the System section here. We're going to go to Manufacturer. We're going to say like Dell, because sometimes it's Dell or Dell Inc. or whatever their name is these days. So I'm going to say if the computer system is like Dell. Now here at the bottom, these are all the values that I'm going to spit out of it. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say that I want to know the system. I want to know the manufacturer. I want to know the model. I want to know, I don't know, the service tag or something like that. So you go and add all the values that you want to. And now I have a simple query here called Dell Workstations. Very easy to pull that information out. I mean, how long did that take me? 30 seconds maybe in order to pull that information out. We want to make it so that you can very, very easily ask the database a question and get that information back. You can see I have some other sample queries here, things like, show me people that have Google Chrome, but only when it's older than version 60. You can start to add more complex things like ands and ors and greater thans and less thans and things like that. So I can see all of my machines that have Google Chrome older than a certain version, or people that have low disk space, or people that are working in our VDI environment, people that are upgradable to Windows 10. So these are all actionable. It gives us the ability to actually take this information and do something with it and turn it into an action. So, for example, I could target all the people that are upgradable to Windows 10 with a Windows 10 migration. And if a new machine came online that was Windows 7 or something like that, it would potentially be upgradable, and it would kind of receive that package. So it doesn't have to be a one-time thing. It can be a much more, permanent use of the technology. So you don't have to remember, hey, everyone in accounting is supposed to get this software. I could target someone in accounting, and that could be via a query, or that could be down here through something like Active Directory. So here I have my Active Directory. If I wanted to go into groups and I wanted to target all of my accountants. So, when that user logs in and they're belonging to the group called accountants, we could target them with something, an upgrade or a piece of software, or something like that. All right, next let's talk about patch management. So patch management is incredibly important to security. Obviously, if number 3 or 4 on the security list, can't remember which one it is continuous vulnerability remediation. So understanding what is vulnerable and pushing out patches to them. So here we have our vulnerability database. We have a huge database, not only just the manufacturers like an Apple and a Microsoft, but also third parties, Google, Chrome, Firefox, Java, et cetera, et cetera. All of these show up in our database. We have something like 75 manufacturers that we patch. And, this is not a side job for Avanti. Avanti patches something like 50 million endpoints currently. And so it is a big piece of the puzzle. Patching is not a glamorous job, but it needs to be done, and we can make sure that it's done, very efficiently. So I can scroll through here. I can take a look at, a vulnerability, open it up, and look at the properties of it. We're going to download the patches because the patch isn't the vulnerability. This is the vulnerability up here. Down here's the patches. You'll see like here's a Windows 7 32-bit. Here's a Windows 7 64-bit. We're going to download the patches for you, store them on the server, and then you can choose when to get them sent out. With something called autofix. So autofix is a great way to come in and say, hey, I want to approve that this patch gets sent out to a certain subset of the machine. So normally it might come in and, not be approved for anyone. And I want to go in and say, for example, the patch pilot group is who I want to send it out to, a group of machines in your organization that you want to test on first, and then maybe you want to push it out to everyone in the Salt Lake City office, or everyone that is a workstation or at the XYZ campus. So you go and approve these patches to be sent out to the machines, and then they'll receive that patch. Now, the trick to this is not approving patches. That's easy. Anyone here? Heck, I can highlight all of them, approve all of them, push them all out. That would be really easy. The problem is interacting with the users, right? We have these funny things, these humans that sit in front of our machines that are the biggest problem in technology, if you ask me. So we've got to solve that particular problem. And when we scan and how we patch, it's actually pretty trivial. And I almost don't care. Scan whenever, patch whenever. It really doesn't matter to me. You come in here and you say, here's when I want to scan. Here is the schedule that's going to happen. Is it going to recur every certain number of days? Should we only do it during a certain time range, et cetera? All of these things are easy in my opinion. However, there's one thing that's incredibly difficult, and if you don't do it correctly, they're going to slash your tires in the parking lot, and that is rebooting. So we have our own subsection of machines or our own subsection of our agent configuration exclusively for reboot settings, and that gives us the ability to go in and say, not everyone's created equal. In my example, I have store machines, I have executives, I have corporate laptops. So I'm going to go in here to my executives. I'm going to say, well, should we ask for a reboot? Should we never reboot? Should we always reboot? Should we prompt the user? And when we prompt, what should it look like? My fake company I use to show off all my technologies is called Vertrillo. I put my logo at the top here. I want to customize this text. The user doesn't know what Avanti is or what Avanti means. Let's not get that in front of them. Let's have our branding on top of it. And let's control when that happens. Should it automatically reboot? Should it, if no one's at the login screen, it's just a control-delete, nobody's logged in, should we reboot? Should we do it if they don't respond to it after 3 days? You're going to go through and customize this however fits your organization. I've been doing this a long time, and I know it's going to be a really weird thing to say, but I've never met two organizations that patch the same way. Patching is this really weird, obscure, unique thing that everybody does different. And so we want to make sure that we adapt to your organization's needs instead of saying, oh, well, heavy-handed, here's exactly how you do it, exactly how you reboot, and here's all your options, good luck. We want to make it flexible for you. So you get to choose all these different options, but then you can also layer on top of that things like maintenance windows. Well, that's great and all, but we can only reboot the third Sunday of the month between midnight and 3 a.m. So you're going to layer on these different settings with these different agent settings that you have because, again, not everybody is the same. Lastly, things like do not disturb. Wouldn't it be pretty obnoxious if I was in the middle of a PowerPoint presentation and it popped up and asked me to reboot? I mean, we've all seen it. We've all chuckled at it. It's not so funny for the salesperson that's giving that pitch. So, being able to watch for things and let them stop our rebooting process, PowerPoint.exe existing in a full screen mode, now's not a good time. Let's not do that. Or, if somebody's running payroll.exe, I don't want them screwing with my paycheck. So let's not have it interrupt during that particular process. So that's patch management. All right, we've got a question here. What's the best way to push patches silently so it does not impact the end user? So built right into the product is the nature of silent, meaning you don't have to do anything special when you're pushing out this version of Google or this Excel patch or any of these things. from a verbose or silent perspective, you don't have to do anything to make them silent. They're essentially, it's silent by default. That's what you're paying for the product, is they go and package it and create it just for you. When you are choosing when to do the patching, I kind of showed you a little bit about what that looks like under distribution and patch here. I even created one here called verbose scanning. I can choose whether during a scan I'm going to make it visible to the end user, and that is, give me a second, I'll remember where that's at. Notification right here. So, should we show the progress? In this case, we're always going to show the progress. Now, my personal opinion, don't show the progress to the end user. What they don't know can't hurt them. I would make this never. I would make this silent. I would make it, quiet, quiet. And that's just the default setting. Is actually quiet unless you go in and change it. However, Reboot's different because we're going to impact the user, because we're going to kick them off and potentially impact their day. That one we do need to be verbose on, and so you would just go in and do these controls kind of like I talked about today. So like I said, essentially silent out of the box, but we can make it verbose if there would be a specific use case for you. Okay, so jumping on to some of the other components inside of our endpoint management, we have the ability to push out software. So that software can be anything. It can be EXEs, it can be batch files, it can be VB scripts, it can be Windows Store applications, it can be links, it can be shortcuts, it can be iOS and Android. We haven't talked about MDM much, but we'll talk about that here in a second. It can be Macintosh packages or Linux RPMs. So pretty much anything we can push out and we can make silent. And what's cool about this is it gives you the ability to even create like your own little app store. Here on my computers up here, most of these are, fake machines, but I think I have a couple of actual real machines in here. And if we go and remote control them, that's something else that the tool actually does is remote control. We're able to see what the end user's experience would look like with that. So if we open up the our application portal here. No, let's see if it's right there, Portal Manager. When I go to create an application, I can choose who potentially is a target for this. And like in this case, I've created a package for Office 2010. And I'm giving the user the ability to control that. Now, I'm not just going to give them the setup.exe and tell them good luck. This is our customization with our permissions and our config. They're just choosing when to install it. So, if we jump back over here to our console, you can see under Office Applications, I've gone and configured it and said how it works and how we make it silent and how we have an MSP file and, whether what permissions that we use it as. We're going to use the local system as full admin rights. So I'm going to control all of those functions for the user. The user is just choosing when to do it. The utopian goal where their user solves their own problem. They want to get access to Office or Chrome or insert whatever application that you have out there. The user has the ability to do that on their own and receive that software. Yet we didn't have to give out admin rights, so the user didn't have to go track that down by themselves. So that's our software distribution. From an imaging perspective, we have a fabulous suite of tools called provisioning. Provisioning is just our fancy way of doing imaging. And we break it down into small steps. So what kind of small steps are they? Well, like deploying the actual operating system. Put the OS bits on the hard drive. I don't care what kind of imaging technique we use. We have our own imaging called ImageW. It's sector-based. You can use it. Great. Maybe you love Ghost. We can use Ghost.exe and Ghost images. We could use ImageX, Microsoft's WIM format. This is very popular. Great, let's use it. Let's use some third party. I don't really care. Having the operating system be put on the hard drive is actually the easiest part of this. All the hard parts are making sure that the drivers work, making sure that we don't have to have multiple images, making sure that it's joined the domain, making sure it's customized for the user. All of those are much, much harder than just getting the OS on. So we're going to get the OS on via whatever mechanism is most convenient. And then we're going to do things like hardware-independent imaging. Right here, hardware-independent imaging. We have a great database. If we jump back over here to our patch management, it actually downloads all the major manufacturers. So HP, Dell, and Lenovo, you just come in here and say, oh yeah, we're an HP desktop shop, and it's going to go download all the drivers for you. And we're not going to necessarily have all of them. And if you're using something like a Toughbook or something that's maybe a little bit more obscure, you can get that driver, put it in a folder, and it'll suck it up into the repository, and then we can use it from a hardware independent imaging perspective. So we break those actions down into small steps that we call templates. So our templates are things like deploying the operating system, joining the domain, installing a piece of software, installing the agent, doing a patch scan. So you don't have to program these or script these or anything like that. They're just all GUI driven. Here I can say, patch the system. I can just add an action, choose from this drop-down box and say, oh yeah, let's join the domain. And then I just put the information in. So I don't need to know the net DOM command to be able to go through and create this. So other actions, I can start snapping these together, kind of like Lego bricks. Here I have a basic Windows 10. Well, what does basic Windows 10 mean in my little universe? Well, I'm going to deploy the Windows 10 agent. I'm going to deploy the Windows 10 operating system. I'm going to install the agent. I'm going to install Chrome. Install the map software. I'll talk about that, and I'll talk about the UWM agent when we get to things like Environment Manager. I'm going to join the domain, and then I'm going to do a security scan. And this gives us the ability to, say, great, let's go and deploy a basic Windows 10. But then maybe I want more than that. Maybe I want an accounting machine. And what is accounting in my universe? Well, accounting is a basic Windows 10, but then on top of that, let's layer on Office 2013. So that gives us the ability to build on that more basic application and kind of go from there. And maybe I want to go one step higher in accounting supervisor. And oh, well, that just means an accounting machine. But then we also install something or Chrome or whatever. And now I can just go and sit down to that machine, do a pixie boot, say, hey, we're putting an accounting supervisor, and away we go. Now, a lot of people jump in and say, oh, well, it's more complex than that, because what did they have on their machine before if we're re-imaging it? Well, we have a product to package mapping, this install map software thing that came up. And the concept is that if we found software before, we could put some other kind of software back, either the same or an upgrade or something like that. So, here in this example, if I found let me make that a little bit bigger. If I found Office Professional Plus 2010, I'm going to want to install Office 2013. If I found Office Professional Plus 2013, I'm going to go and install Office 2013. So I can find where it was before and then try and get it back in a very similar manner. So that's our installing map software. All right, so I could ramble on about provisioning for quite a bit of time, but I'm going to stop there and answer a couple of questions. I got a question here. Are those the newest drivers? Generally speaking, yes. The drivers are going to download and update on a very regular basis. The default download is, we set it up to once per day. And it, you'll always have the latest drivers. Now, this won't go and upgrade drivers out in the field. That's a little bit of a different animal. This is more, you get the machines in from the factory, you're going to re-image them. They'll have the most latest drivers at that point, or whatever drivers that we go and choose. Upgrading drivers in the field is more of a software upgrade or patching process that is kind of something else. I got another question. How long does it take usually to set up this application? Well, that kind of all depends. Just the basics, what we've kind of got through so far, except for provisioning, is pretty quick. In a couple of days, you can have it up and going. Provisioning, I'm not going to sugarcoat. I'm an engineer and I've been, doing this for a long time. It takes time to set up. You got to, put a dime in to get a dollar out. So usually it's something like 3 to 5 days to set up an entire provisioning process and test it and have it working on 4 or 5 makes and models and have migration part of it and, get it up and going. So it does take a little bit of time to make it happen. It's not going to, one checkbox and then all of your process is going to be fixed. One other question, does the HII automatically rebuild afterwards? The short answer is no, because our image, for lack of a better term, is never going to have any drivers in it. So if I go point at the image right here, it is going to be blank, for lack of a better term. I can capture it on a VM, for example. We lay down that operating system, and before we reboot, we run the hardware independent imaging process, and we look real time. What's on the local machine? What do I have in my repository? And it goes and grabs the latest version of the driver out of the repository, shoves it down onto that machine right there, right now. It doesn't actually rebuild anything. It doesn't change the image. The image stays essentially static, and our driver process kind of lives in a different vacuum that exists afterwards, before you reboot, but while the operating system is still kind of down on the machine. All right, so our Endpoint Manager, kind of last thing I want to talk about was our mobile device management. We have the ability to manage mobile devices, so iOS, Android, and now mobile device management is kind of starting to twist. Apple and Microsoft are thinking that laptops are mobile devices more than, they think of them as a phone more than they think of them as a computer. So we can manage those as well through those mobile device management technologies as well. But here I have an iPad, same kind of thing. I have inventory information. I could do the typical MDM stuff. I can wipe, I can lock, I can factory reset. I can do different things like that, as well as go in here and control how that mobile device works. So if I want to have extreme control over my mobile devices, I can go in and say, whether I want to have a passcode, or, how do they connect to the Wi-Fi, and does FaceTime work, and, et cetera, et cetera. You can customize these and then apply those configurations to your mobile devices to lock them down or require some kind of a communication agent associated with it. All right, a couple more questions here. Is there a way to obtain the firmware level for a desktop computer video card? That's a fabulous question. I don't know the answer to that. We do have very robust inventory, but I don't know if that specific attribute is pulled. We can kind of crack open a real machines here, scan really quick and take a look at that. It would be somewhere here under video would be my guess, and then adapter. So here under the adapter, I can tell you the type, I can tell you the version. That version looks a little bit more like a software driver version would be my guess, but I don't know that for a fact. So, here's a driver version. So I don't know if that's firmware or not, but you can see we do have, monitor information and so forth as well we can pull in. If there was ever something you said, hey, there is a way to pull it, all you need to do is grab this WMI or registry key. We can actually pull those custom pieces of information in as well. So it is something you could track down if there was a electronic way on an operating system to run a command and receive a result of what the firmware would be. We could pull that information in. Next question, if it is just as robust, why would we need to install the agent? I'm going to guess that was a question about the inventory scan, the fact that we can do our agentless scanner. The inventory scan is just as robust. You can't do anything else. I can't patch it. I can't push out software to it. I can't do any of my other functions to that device through the agentless scanner. It's read-only essentially. So it's a great way to see that it's out there, but it's not a great way to manage it long term if I want to run a patch scan on it or push out software to it and things like that. And a good example of that would be managing devices outside the network. We have our cloud services appliance, gives us the ability to manage devices when they're not on the network. Here we say if you're on the inside, use the internal name. But if you're at a Starbucks or something like that, actually tunnel your traffic through this public IP address, this public name, and that way I can do inventory, remote control, pushing out software. I can even do Windows 7 to Windows 10 upgrades, just over the internet. So our cloud services appliance gives us the ability to manage those devices. If I don't have an agent on there, the minute it picks up and leaves my organization, I'm never going to be able to interact with it. It's going to be, invisible to me. Okay, so let's jump back over to our presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about Avanti Security Controls. Avanti Security Controls is a product that is fabulous at just patching. So a lot of people come to me and say, that's all great. I like your stuff, but I love SCCM, or, I need to patch my servers. I don't care about imaging and pushing out software and remote control on my servers. That's just something I don't care about. All I care about is patching. So Avanti Security Controls is great because it focuses on one thing and one thing only, and that's patching. And we can also do it without an agent. This is actually a unique technology that you can push out patches without an agent on the machine. So very easy to digest. I can see all my machines right here. Green is good, red is bad. I can see that this machine right here is missing 20, it's actually missing 130. Whoever's running my patch management obviously needs to get fired. But I can take a look at what missing patches I have down here at the bottom. I can right click and say, I want to deploy all the missing patches. I can create a deployment template here at the top. Oh, let's have a standard virtual machine template, or here's how we do it with our Exchange servers, or let's patch our SQL server and notify the machine owner associated with it. What that kind of looks like when you're going through is you can do things like understand whether there's IIS or SQL on the server and potentially shut those down before we apply patching. A pre-deployment reboot. Sometimes it's nice to clear out the RAM, clear out the gunk, get this, in a nice cleaner state before we start applying patches. A post-deployment reboot after the fact. That's pretty straightforward. Email. Now, when you're patching a user's workstation, they don't know, they don't care. It really doesn't matter. We just need to have a means to an end. But with a server, that's kind of a different story. The application owner may need to know that it's getting patched. They want to interact with that and understand if it's going to, potentially break something. So here I can go in and say, I want to send to the machine owner the deployment status by deployment. So they're getting an email, hey, this patches came out, we pushed them out here, we rebooted your machine, everything's back up and going. And so you can interact with those system administrators and tell them, that we are patching. We can create a custom action. We can tell it to do something as part of the patching process. Everyone has those delicate servers. Oh yeah, well, after I reboot, I got to start things up in a very specific order. No problem. I can come in here and say after reboot. After reboot, let's run :/after reboot.ps1. So it's going to come back up. It's going to execute that PowerShell command. It's going to start services in the correct order. Just for example's sake, I could do it before the reboot or before we do patches, shut everything down. You can even do really complicated things like, before any patches, contact your F5 load balancer and take this particular machine out of, out of the load balancing pools because we're about to take it offline and do maintenance on it, things like that. Distribution servers for things like, multiple locations. That way it grabs it from the local server instead of grabbing it, a long ways away across the WAN. And then we have some great integration into VMware. This project's actually owned by VMware for many years. So being able to take snapshots before we push out our patches, even deploy patch templates, things like that. Sometimes we forget about our templates. So this product is called Avanti Security Controls. Like I said, absolutely fabulous at just patching. And I find a lot of customers end up getting this just for the data center. So they use this to patch the data center, and they use that previous product, Endpoint Manager, to push out to the workstations. Okay, so let's jump back over to our presentation here. I want to talk a little bit about application control, and I want to kind of set this up a little bit. Application control, helps solve things like administrative rights, and we kind of have a fundamental problem that maybe you've already taken away admin rights, but it doesn't solve the fundamental underlying problem that a user can still execute something. Go grab Google Chrome. Go grab the Chrome setup. You don't have to be an admin to install it. It installs it in the local profile. Well, how does ransomware work? It doesn't have to necessarily have admin rights. It could just corrupt everything or encrypt everything in the user's profile. So I believe that from the ground up, Windows is fundamentally broken. Because we allow the user to execute any exe that is visible to them and is, that they can read, I just think that's fundamentally flawed. And, Microsoft hasn't done anything to change it, and I don't think they're going to change it. They're just going to, continue down the path that they've been doing for a long time. And so people have been saying, oh, let's come and fix this. Let's do whitelisting. I love the concept of application whitelisting. It's been around for a long time, and it's the biggest piece of shelfware you're ever going to meet. Why? Well, it's too big of overhead. You are trying to manage a list of 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. I mean, how many applications do you actually have? When you start digging into it, you just realize that there are so many applications that a human cannot keep track of them. And the minute that you have it solved, 5 minutes later, there's going to be a patch to something, and you need to go and adjust the list. So whitelisting has too much overhead. Blacklisting is just never complete enough. It's just there's too many holes. Too many new crap comes out today or every day, and there's too many permutations. You're never going to stay on top of it. So That's our 2 dam problems with application whitelisting. So we're going to take a different approach with our application control. And it's actually really straightforward. We're going to look at the NTFS file ownership attribute. Who owns this file? And make relatively simple logic associated with that. Something tries to run, regedit tries to run. We're going to look at the trusted owners. That's just something in our configuration of we say, who do we trust? And if it's trusted, we say, yes, it's allowed to run. And sorry, not if it's trusted. If the user is trusted, yes, it's allowed to run. If the user is not trusted, no, it's not allowed to run. Now, I have a question. Who is trusted? Well, I'll tell you, it's everyone except for the user. So the systems account, someone in IT, someone on the help desk, the account we use to push out software, it's everyone in the universe except for the end user. The end user is not trusted. And when they download something, we're going to deny that. And so it's pretty straightforward. If I open up and get on one of my machines here, I can show you what that looks like. Look, they have all of these various applications installed, and they can run and execute them. And there's no real work associated with that. It's business as usual when they're executing all of these things. But if they go to run something that they've downloaded, and I'll show you if we open up Chrome setup and go to the security, go to the advanced, go to the owner, you can see I own it. In my example, I'm not an administrator. So when I go to execute this, what happens? I am denied execution rights. So we focus on that trusted ownership. It makes it so you don't have to keep track of lists. Lists are the big problem. Let's get away from them. One other cool thing that we have while we're here and we're monitoring everything that runs on a machine is we can delegate administrative rights. So I have some fonts here. And if you never knew, a font is actually something that requires administrative privileges to install. It's kind of as silly as that sounds. So normally they come in here and they not have the ability to install it. I can come in here and say install. And other than, yes, it's already installed, I'll overwrite it. That's it. So me as a non-administrator had the ability to do an administrative function. So I'm able to slice that up and individually delegate it and say that this one user can install fonts or open the control panel or change printer settings or insert whatever kind of function you can think of. We have the ability to give out those particular rights. Now, what's really crazy is we can actually do the opposite of that as well. We can take away rights. There's plenty of times that people have administrator rights and they probably shouldn't. So I can actually remove rights in the same way. You could log in as domain admin, but if I don't want you to install a font or uninstall antivirus or make some kind of change, I have the ability to do that. So that's application control. All right, next I want to talk about Environment Manager. So Environment Manager, sorry, I keep doing the wrong side there. Environment Manager controls how we interact with the user's personalization data. And I like to talk about a profile. So we've all been dealing with profiles for a long time. I like to think of a profile like a cow for a couple of different reasons. First of all, it's very, very large. It's unwieldy, and we can look inside of that profile and talk about the cuts of meat inside the profile. Well, most of it is junk, and shank. Shank is the leg of the cow, right? We don't want that meat. That's not good meat. We want the filet mignon. Then we want the exciting part. That's a typical profile, full of garbage. But a user only cares about 5 things. They care about their Word recent items, they care about their wallpaper, their favorites, their couple of shortcuts, and their Outlook signature. I mean, when you start adding up all the things that they actually care about, it's not as many as you think. So we want to grab just that filet mignon. So how do we do that? Well, the way that you talk to a profile is with the registry or a file system. So in my example here, winware.exe talks to the file system or it talks to the registry. Environment Manager hijacks that. What it does is it grabs the call that is being made, and we look at a list of include versus exclude. If it's something that's important, we include it and we store it in a database. If it's something that's not important, we exclude it and we just let it exist in the local profile. And most of it is junk. Most of it is excluded. The average user profile is only something like 30 megabytes of actual personalization data that they care about. Yet you've all opened up profiles and seen them be, 10 gigs, 20 gigs, all these big, giant, monstrous disasters. So we include all the good stuff. We exclude everything else. So that's how the Environment Manager agent works. Additionally, it does the first thing people will come up and say, hey, what about files? What about my documents? What about things like that? Well, we have an answer for that side of the equation. Those really aren't personalization items. We want to tackle them differently, and that's with our file director. So file director gives us the ability to essentially create redirection. Now, this is not folder redirection. It is more like synchronization technology. So we have public and we have private mapping points. So a private map point would be something like the desktop or my documents or my pictures. And we can synchronize that to wherever we want. That could be an on-premise file server. That could be OneDrive. That could be Google Drive. If you pay for Office 365, you're getting 1 terabyte of space. Why don't you put it to use and synchronize the user's files up there? But a lot of people say, hey, we don't like the cloud. It's security problems. Great. Let's just synchronize it to our on-premise server. Then we have complete control over it. So the other side is the public one, things like the shared folders. If you have a department folder that's 4 terabytes, you don't want to synchronize that down to a machine. So you have the ability to do things like only do manual syncing or only show a little stub file, and when they click on it, it's going to go and download it. So file director works on the files inside of a user's profile. The environment manager, you already said, or we already saw, works on the personalization, the cookies and the settings and the things like that. And this, combined together, they give us the ability to easily make it so when we're moving from Windows 7 to Windows 10, or you get a new laptop, or moving from VDI back to physical, or vice versa, the user, when they move between those, will their experience will be the same. So. All right, so that is Environment Manager and our File Director. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about our Avanti Cloud. So Avanti Cloud is a brand new thing from Avanti, and you're going to see a lot of work and effort and improvement in this in the future. So it's got some cool things with it today, but expect to see even more in the future. One of my favorites is the real-time intelligence, being able to understand exactly kind of what's going on right here, right now. So let's show that kind of in action of exactly how Avanti Cloud works. So Avanti Cloud can connect to things like your Endpoint Manager. So the Endpoint Manager you already saw, I can suck up all that information from those devices. But I also have this thing called real-time, and real-time really is the magic of it. Far too many times my customers say, hey, even the queries and stuff that you showed me were too difficult, or too difficult to understand. We have a natural language search up here that I can just type in questions. So it gives us some examples here of things we could do if we wanted to look at like the smart hard drive status, or if I wanted to look at the security dashboard. Oh, sorry, I needed to refresh it beforehand. Let's try it one more time. So show me the security dashboard that shows all of my different machines and what their state is, and who has BitLocker enabled, who has UAC enabled. One thing that's really, really cool about this is how quickly this was refreshed. So I know it didn't look like it, but it in real time went and asked the question of all my devices. And I can ask thousands of machines. This is where we use a new IoT protocol called MQTT that's designed for lots of rapid queries, spread out machines, just internet connected devices. And it's real time. I know right here, right now, what's going on. If I want to go up here and say, I don't even know what to do, so I'm just going to type in Notepad. And it's going to understand what I meant. It meant who has the process called Notepad running on their machine. Well, found 5 copies of that. Oh, here's my machine right here down at the bottom, my user that's running it. Here's my version of Notepad that I have open. It's a little tiny bit hard to see, but we should be able to go in here and say, I want to stop that process. So, did you see how quick that was? That was nearly instantaneous. This is something that we've never really had a good grasp on in our endpoint management, is real time. That's just like it sounds. It's real time. I was able to see that it was executing it. I was able to stop it. I was able to see that it's not being executed anymore on that particular machine. So we have lots of information that shows up here. Show me who is a local admin, and it's going to respond right here, right now. Here's people that were unexpected admins. What machine was it? And I can create actions here. I can have an action called remove from local admins. Back here in my security dashboard, I had the ability to, like on BitLocker, I can create an action if they don't have BitLocker enabled, to go and enable BitLocker and restart the machine and things like that. So I can have actions associated with that. It's not just looking at the data. I can report back on that. I can trend information over time, so I've turned on log on time trending. So what's happening is over the past, several months, I have trended the log on performance of a particular user to see what's happening so I can understand, oh yeah, they really are complaining. Look at that. They went to log in. It took 45 seconds on July 9th at 6:40 p.m. There's something going on. I need to troubleshoot that. The user's not really just lying to me associated with it. So I can trend some of this information on any of the values that I cared about. And when we dig back into it, here I can even look at the individual device in extreme detail. So I click on a device here. It shows me the real-time status. I know exactly what's going on with this particular machine, assuming that machine is online. It looks like maybe it's not. So if I went up here and search for my machine, which I do have the real-time agent on, we would be able to see the data on that. So real-time intelligence, that's something that we strove for a long time, to be able to, instantly right now what's going on inside of my ecosystem. So that's Avanti Cloud. Expect to hear more about this in the future. And you're going to start to see a lot of cool things, improvements in the future, maybe things like remote control or patching, natively just inside the Avanti Cloud. You don't even need the on-premise solution anymore. But, that's coming. Eventually, we're going to get to there. Okay, let me jump down and see if there's any more questions here. Looks like there's a few of them. New on my network. I want to know if you can set up scans hourly and send me an email when there's something new found. Is it possible? There are downsides with this. So generally speaking, yes, you can do that. We have in Endpoint Manager, we have unmanaged device discovery. Unmanaged means I don't have an agent on it. And you're going to go through here and you're going to say things like, oh, well, I know about my infrastructure. Oh, I got some switches. We can kind of relegate those over to the corner and say, no, don't notify us about those. I only want to know about the new things. Absolutely, you can schedule this. So you could go in here and say, I want to schedule this task. I want to have it run on a regular basis. And then I want a report to come in based on any net new results. Now, this is not a max solution. It's not going to prevent them from getting on. It would just be, the notification. So yes, you can absolutely do it. It's not a huge downside because the scans don't take a huge amount of time, and you'd be able to get, at least some information back. Can this data be moved to an application management tool like Splunk? Splunk is more of a central location. So from a SIM integration perspective, absolutely. Everything that you saw today can point at a SIM tool, Splunk and other SIM-like tools. We can absolutely take this information and then go shove it over into a more centralized logging tool. Next, a question: how do we know if we are licensed for Avanti Cloud? So the Avanti Cloud, you either have to buy it. That's just one way to do it. Get out your credit card and you can get it. If you attended Avanti's Interchange and you signed up for it there, they gave you a year's free at Interchange. If you own the end user or the enterprise license agreement, the ELA, you get cloud as part of that. So if it's one of those three things, then you will own Avanti Cloud. If it's not one of those three things, and you want to kick the tires on it, give me a call. I'll happy to get a 30-day trial set up for Avanti Cloud for you. Question about Avanti Cloud replacing the on-prem Avanti software. Yes, in a long time. Don't hold your breath. I bet we're going to be 5 years plus until we get to that point. So it's a cool feature. I like what it does, but it is by no means going to be replacing on-premise technology anytime soon. So we're going to have to stick with the on-premise for the time now. Another question: do you have to enter them all, or will it scan an entire range? Here, we're CIDR aware, so you could come in here and say, 10.1.0.0 through, with subnet mask of that, and it would scan, everything in that range all the way up to 255. So no, you don't have to add all the Class C subnets. You can put in CIDR subnets or Class Bs and things like that, and it will scan a much larger range. Okay, so it looks like that's all the questions. If I didn't get to one of your questions, or if you have anything additionally, please let me know. You can email me directly. Here's my contact information. and I would be happy to answer your question or get you hooked up with a salesperson, talk about some of these solutions more. And I appreciate everyone joining. We do have an asset management webinar coming up. Here's my 30 seconds on asset management. What I showed you today is not asset management. That is discovery. Asset management is when you have people asking you questions like, what's the purchase order associated with this? What is the depreciation on this asset? Who is it assigned to versus who is actually consuming it today? How many keyboards do I have in stock in the Boise office? Those kinds of questions are the true heart of asset management. And everything we did today feeds into that, but it's a much more higher level conversation about those kinds of functions as it relates to things like accounting and so forth. So register for that webinar if you want to know more about our asset management. I really appreciate everyone attending. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please reach out. Everyone have a great day. Thank you.